In today's video, I'm going to be speaking to Anastasia Perysinakis. Anastasia is a final year chemical engineering student, and alongside this is the founder of a social care focused startup named Pleotek. She was also recognized last year as one of the top 100 women in the UK in tech. In today's interview, I'm going to be speaking to her about how she transformed her not so smooth experience at the start of her university journey into becoming a top mark student. I'm also going to be speaking to her about her passion for health and social care and how she's been able to leverage the opportunities at university to starting her own startup. I hope you enjoy watching the video. So welcome to inSTEM, Anastasia. Really good to have you. Could you please start by introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Anastasia or Annie, whatever you prefer, and I'm studying chemical engineering at Queen's University Belfast at the moment. So I'm taking a year out to work for Jaguar Land Rover in the manufacturing business office, and then I'll go back to do my MEng next year. At the same time, I also have my own startup on the side and got a number of sort of other different projects that I'm working on. So yeah, I've kind of enjoyed the last year, sort of taking a different perspective on my degree and what I can do with it.
Awesome. I'm really excited to speak to you about the different things that you're involved with. But before that, can I ask what sparked your interest in engineering?
Yeah, I think this was it's quite a painful one to look back on sometimes, because I think when I was around A level, I knew I had a lot of interest. I knew I had a lot of strength in multiple different subjects, but I just didn't know how to articulate that into a career path. My dad's a lawyer, my mum studies English literature, and so I always thought that was kind of what I was going to go into. But I think at the end of the day, my main criteria, and I know this is so cringy and cheesy and something everybody says, but I think I genuinely felt it very deep at the time. My main criteria was making a difference. And I just didn't know how I could make a difference on sort of like the biggest scale possible. And I think when I sort of looked into what will the next generation's problems be, what are the main problems even now we're experiencing, to me, the answer to all those problems sort of took a route back to engineering. So actually, it wasn't even the most natural path for me in terms of academically my strengths and my background. I think I just sort of wanted to do the most with my life, and that's where I ended up.
That's awesome. I can relate to that, to an extent. I don't think it's cringy that, you wanted to make it or you want to make a difference. I do think that a lot of people want to in some way or the other. And I also believe that engineering is a good sort of foundation to find those opportunities, through which you can make a difference. And how have you found it so far?
Yeah, so what I failed to really understand at the time was engineering isn't really it's not the science of creating new ideas that is what makes it so powerful. It's the problem solving skill set. It's the foundation of taking a step back, looking at a problem from different angles, trying to find the root cause as to why it's there in the first place, and then coming up with a creative solution. And I think that's why at the beginning I found it incredibly difficult. I found it quite constraining. I didn't enjoy my first 2 or 3 years at engineering school, which was really quite emotionally difficult, which is why I say I look back on my time choosing my career path with quite a lot of internal pain, because I found it a lot more challenging than my peers. I felt that I had to work a lot more. I moved to a part of the country that I'd never been to before, and I found it quite culturally jarring at first. And I just thought, I've literally ruined my life. I'm never going to pass. And I think it only sort of, I understood the real power and the real opportunities of engineering post third year, when I had finished off actually with quite good grades. I got a quite good placement, and then I sort of started to discover other engineers in my age group, and even just people that I look up to that are further on with their careers, and realized I could actually do something with this that is more suited to my personality type and the way my brain thinks. So I think, yeah, it's been a very, very difficult journey. And looking back now, obviously we might mention this later on, but I was diagnosed this year with ADHD, like quite severe ADHD, and just started medication. So I think looking back on why I found academia so difficult sort of relates to that, because my brain is not very linear. It's more creative. It's more, I can make connections between different ideas, I think,
Right.
maybe more easily than other people. But the way academia is set up is very much not that way. It's a lot more linear and very constrained. And I think that's why I found it so challenging at first.
That's really interesting. Even more so because despite those challenges that you've faced and you've mentioned, you've turned it into something amazing. So, for example, when I was doing a bit of research on you, I noticed that you were recognized as one of the women in tech top 100 in the country. You're still a student. You were also awarded the Young Member of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers.
Yeah, that was mad. That was really, really quite, a lot.
Working for one of the biggest sort of companies in the automobile sector. So I think it says a lot about you that you've been able to transform those challenges into successes. And I hope that anyone who might be struggling with their first couple of years of university, perhaps they've moved to a place they're not used to, or they're finding engineering a little bit different to what they expected. I hope they can see as an example or someone that can turn that around. I think it's amazing that you've been able to turn that around, and you've only just started. I also found out during my research that you had a real interest in social issues.
Yeah.
I think it's not so common with people with our background, engineering, or even sort of technical, other technical subjects. So I found that quite sort of fascinating. I wanted to find out why you so interested in this area.
I think I actually found that there were a lot more people like us with that sort of interest when I gravitated towards the startup space, because that is naturally where people with new ideas and passions to actually do something different and change the status quo sort of end up, I think, in general. I think, there are definitely two distinct groups of people that go into careers like engineering or even politics and finance, economics. It's the defined route. This is what my parents did, or this is what I know will get me a good job and a career and money type of people. And the group of people, and this is not to cast some sort of value judgment, neither is better or worse. It's just I can very much distinguish between two types of people now when I go, when I find myself in amongst my peer group, it's sort of easy to pick them apart. And there's the other group that I sort of mentioned before. You choose the career that you're going to make an impact with. The reason why I went down that route is, I think, so I'm a first generation economic migrant. We first moved to England. We were not in the financial situation and even social status that we currently have now as a family, I think. And I witnessed my parents work incredibly hard for years to sort of make sure that we end up with all the opportunities that we do have as a family. So I think that's the first sort of aspect. And then the second aspect is my little brother is quite severely autistic. So I grew up in and around respite centres, meeting other young people with a variety of disabilities, with different levels of capacity and physical capabilities. And I always sort of saw the resilience of both those individuals and also their loved ones. But also, and this is really important to also kind of touch on, the level of support that was afforded to them, because you can't win a war by yourself. And that really made me think that it's because that support was so necessary for us, it would just be so morally just terrible of me to not be that support for even one other family in, while I could, while I had my health, while I had the opportunities around me to be able to do so. So I think I started working in care as well as soon as I could. When I was like 14, I started volunteering at respite centres, getting a few cash in hand paid jobs looking after people. Then when I turned 18, I was legally allowed to, have more responsibility over people's care plans and personal care and their own finances. And I would take my service users in my car with me and go about our day, just, trying to be that support network for other people. And I think it was that mixture of and I think anyone who's worked in care will feel this. It's the mixture of that pure joy and laughter that you can experience in some some situations with your service users where you just think this is actually like pure bliss, where you see somebody who, you know, would not have otherwise been able to go out to the pub and have lunch and laugh with their friends, for example. You see them just laughing about something that you would find totally inane, and it just makes your day. But then contrasted with, you know, when you're at home with those people and they're really struggling to do very basic tasks like go to the toilet, I think that to me gives me a lot of internal sort of momentum to move forward with my career. So that, yes, I loved helping people on that one-to-one basis, but what if I could do something or invent something or even work for a company? Because that's not even, I'm not saying don't work for a company, but one that would, you know, give that sort of like globalized impact on people that really need it. And I think thirdly, and I know this is quite a rambly answer, but I think sort of the third pillar of maybe my philosophy and my you know, ethical sort of framework is when I go back to Greece, I spend a lot of time in Greece every year, and obviously that's where a lot of refugees kind of have to go through to end up to whichever country they end up afterwards. So there are a lot of refugee camps there, and I was, you know, really privileged to make friends and deep connections with a lot of these refugees. And because obviously my mum is Iraqi, and some of these refugees came from Iraq, and it just made me, it really, really does change your perspective to meet somebody who is your age, otherwise looks like you, otherwise presents exactly like you, who has had everything taken from them. And it's just a quirk of luck as to if my mum had stayed back in Iraq, maybe I would have been in that situation. So I think it's those three things that come together to make me think I kind of, my only sort of criteria for a fulfilled life, I should say, is to be able to look back and say, you know, I help people.
So I'm quite interested to find out what has been able to look at those issues from an engineering sort of perspective, was it added to your contribution? How has it impacted how you've been able to contribute to these causes?
Yeah, I think this has actually really sort of inspired my, I think, so I'm going to answer this in a very roundabout way. Basically, to go back on your point on how has my journey through engineering been, and you know, the answer that I gave of it's sort of been quite, it has evolved quite a lot since I first came into engineering. I think I've sort of really developed this passion for healthcare systems. And how I'm going to relate that to just the question that you asked just now is the word system, I think, is really, really important, because in any engineering discipline, you're always working within the confines of a system, and you have to really look at it through that lens. Even if it's, I don't know, a circuit, if you're doing electrical engineering, or you know, control, like a process control exercise. Just everything is to do with interactions. And I think when I started to look at healthcare through that lens, through a more sort of macro, how do all the pieces fit together lens, I didn't really see many differences from the sort of exercises I had been doing in class anyway. This really gave me like a lot of power. I think it just genuinely empowered me, because beforehand, when I was working one-to-one as a carer, I was very much on the receiving end of any policy decisions, of the system that I was working within, and I felt very, very helpless. And I think you can see this echoed a lot within healthcare workers at the moment after coronavirus. It's that feeling of helplessness, of feeling left behind, not being seen. And I think when I took that step back and like pulled in my critical thinking, problem solving, systems viewpoint through engineering to the subject, I kind of realized that I'm actually a lot more powerful than I think I am.
I'm going to go into Pleotek now. So you are the founder of a company called Pleotek.
Yes.
What is Pleotek?
Yeah, so Pleotek is honestly the manifestation of pretty much everything that we've spoken about so far. It came from this internal almost battle that I was facing at the end of my third year, where I just didn't see myself in any conventional engineering role. I think because of my neurodiversity, it's very difficult for me to work to other people's timelines in such a rigid way. I've learned to obviously adapt through my role at Jaguar Land Rover. It's taught me a lot, and I've learned to manage my you know, condition. It's not really a condition, it's just the way I am. I've learned to sort of manage that around a corporate structure, so I've built that skill set. But I think at the beginning I had a lot of fear before I knew that I had ADHD. I had a lot of fear going into that. So it was that internal battle of, okay, I don't see myself in a very conventional situation. I don't think I've got that capacity, but I know I'm a good engineer. I also know I've got all these passions and interests, and I'm not seeing a grad scheme that really represents that. It's not, all the grad schemes are very much, they give you really valuable skill sets for the corporate world, but they don't, not the ones that I've seen anyway, don't give you that internal fulfillment of, okay, this is how I directly help somebody. Now, since then, my perception has changed massively, because there are so many small companies, NGOs. There's a company called LV that like designs like medical devices for women, especially I think going through the pregnancy journey. So there are those avenues, but I think at the beginning, that's where Pleotek came from. And then obviously, like you said, like we've discussed as well, that role for engineers within that healthcare system, or a different sector than you would imagine or attribute usually to engineers. I think I basically sat there one day, I had finished my third year exams, I knew I had done well, and just looked around and was like, the problems I was facing are still there. They're still probably worsening. Coronavirus showed us that there are such deep cracks. And I honestly thought, like, why won't I do something about it? It was more of a why not, as opposed to a I've got this mad idea that I'm going to run with no matter what. It was more of a, well, I don't have a house or a mortgage or kids. I'm very early on in my career. I don't have much risk going into starting something new. So if there are problems and I have the experience and skill set to fix them, then why not? And I think, just to round off that question, that it wouldn't have been possible if it was just me running off with this idea. What really brought it to life was discussions with my peers. And I don't just mean other engineers, because I think if you surround yourself in a bubble, in an echo chamber, you're just never going to get anywhere. It was really looking into a more multidisciplinary approach to building up a team. So I had to get a clinical aspect kind of involved in my team. So I sort of had a conversation with my friend Molly, who was a fifth year, she's going into her fifth year of medical school. And she was also doing care work as well as her degree. So she felt exactly the same way. She had deep passion for it. You could see her getting really heated as she was speaking about her experiences, some of which were probably sometimes even worse than things I had experienced. And then we, had a conversation with a developer, and we realized, okay, this guy's doing a PhD in artificial intelligence, yet he still had experience finding care for his loved ones, which prompted him to develop an algorithm that can predict when you're going to have an epileptic seizure, which ended up getting published in 2 AI journals. So we sort of realized, as we expanded our network and built our team, that even though we come from completely different academic backgrounds, different even walks of life, parts of the world, we all just felt really deeply touched by the same problem. But what made it more powerful is that we could look at it through different perspectives. And that was really when it was born, when I felt, okay, I've got a team, I've got an idea, we've all got drive and passion, and I think, and the resources, and also most importantly, the humility. Everyone in my team is extremely humble and realistic about what we can and can't do and our limitations. I think we're really good at asking for help. So I think that's what gave me a lot of confidence in starting.
That's a really interesting experience, or the journey that you've gone through.
I think I was quite, down on myself a little bit. Maybe it's quite cringy looking back at my old self, but when I was failing everything in second year, I had a lot of responsibilities at home to care for family, and I just have, in my personal life, it can be quite chaotic sometimes with the amount that I sort of have to contend with emotionally, but also coming to a new country and being a first-gen immigrant and doing going through that journey, and also being otherized anyway. I think being otherized because I'm a woman within this sector, and also being otherized because I don't look exactly 100% like people who might be, who consider themselves like pure English, whatever that means. I think I grew up feeling extremely, extremely otherized. especially because the town I grew up in ended up voting UKIP in the local elections. It's like very much that sort of vibe. So I definitely felt very different growing up. And I think starting this journey, I let a lot of those barriers really consume me. And I would use them as kind of shields. Like if somebody looked at my situation and thought you're not as forward, or you're not as you're not where you should be in life, I would always say, but XYZ. But then I took a step back and realized that there's like such a nuanced intersection between privilege and, I mean, I was privileged in so many ways that I hadn't even considered that, you know, I could use and leverage that would help me in a startup. You know, I've got a otherwise very stable family home, parents who would support me in a new venture. Not everyone has these things at all. The benefit of my education, many people don't have that either. And so I basically just thought, I have a lot of strengths. I've got a lot of tools in my toolkit, and these are what I can leverage.
It can't be easy or straightforward, you know, starting something that huge. I think it's huge because I'm speaking from where I see it can go. Do you know what I mean? I know you're still in your early stages.
Thank you. That's really encouraging. Thank you.
But you're on a, you know, I did chemical engineering. It was quite demanding, you know, lots of coursework deadlines and so on and so forth to meet. How do you juggle that with a full-time study? How?
So genuinely honestly, if before I sort of started taking control of my mental health, I wasn't like at all. I was playing a million different sports at the same time. I was trying to also live a balanced social life. I love different, like, you know, film and drawing and photography. And I was trying to really enrich all of those aspects of my life all at once, which is very common for people with ADHD. Now I can think back upon how I thought, but at that time I was really trying to juggle everything whilst simultaneously not being able at all to focus on the one thing that did matter, which was the coursework, the deadlines, the revision. Even lectures, I would just zone out after 10 seconds and like not understand why I was zoning out. And so I think terribly is the answer. The only reason I feel really confident, well, I felt confident the past year and a half and now going forward, is I have actually thought to myself, okay, I really can't do the things that other people seem to be able to do so much easier than me. I found myself thinking, like, I'm not stupid. I know I'm really smart. I've done so well throughout school. I've always been a top performer. I've always got the best grades. So like, why am I struggling now in a different scenario? I just couldn't understand it. So I think again, it's that idea of humility, knowing your limitations are asking for help. And the second I did that and really pushed for psychiatric support is when, okay, I got loads of, you know, I got strategies of how to deal with my daily life. I got extra time in things like, you know, I got breaks during exams, because when you lose focus and zone out when you've got ADHD, just switching what you're doing and coming back to it can like reignite that. So that was a game changer. Also my faculty understanding how I behave and how I learn has now meant that they are just, the way they interact with me could not be more different than before. It's with a lot of patience and support and encouragement, and they give me, again, lots of strategies, and even just support from like the disability services as well, from student finance. Actually, like, you know, a laptop with software that can read out research papers to me so I don't lose focus when I'm reading. Just lots of things like that, which have meant that actually everything that I found challenging before, I actually have lots of support to overcome. So I really find it really jarring when I've watched a lot of these sorts of interviews, and I find it very jarring when people who are sort of in my position will act as though it's through their own, I don't know, genius or passion or hard work or whatever that got them to where they are. But really, it's like, you can't do anything as an island. It's all about the support network around you. So yeah, it's how do I juggle everything with a bucket load of help.
Oh, that's a very interesting perspective, and you're right, that's not one I hear of very often. I take away from that an intense, I guess, knowledge or sound knowledge of yourself, strengths, leveraging those, and limitations, identifying sort of support and help to minimize those limitations. That's interesting. That's a very unique perspective. And for anyone who is in a similar situation to you, I'm talking young female students or maybe graduates who has an idea and they're very passionate about doing something different. They've written it down, but they're sort of like, okay, what do I do next?
Yeah, so again, this is actually probably the easiest question to answer out of everything, and it just boils down to that same concept of knowing your limitations and asking for help. If you don't have money, ask for money. If you don't know how to build an app, ask somebody how to build an app. Like, it's really that simple. For me, more technically, how that happened was I had obviously the idea, I'd sketched it out, I'd thought about it, I'd thought about the systems aspect of it, I'd done a lot of research, I'd done about as much as I could have done alone. And then the next step was, okay, so who around me has the capacity to bring this forward? And I ended up just Googling, my first port of call was really my university. So if you're a student at an actual university, like a registered university in the UK, you are at a massive advantage, because almost definitely your university will have a spin out service, or it will have like an enterprise hub, or even just go up to whoever the business studies lecturer, like head of faculty is. You literally have the power of any single discipline that you can study at your university in your hands. You can ask anyone for help. You can go to any lecturer. The lecturer might not be able to help you, but they'll know contacts. That's the whole point of universities. They're community embedded organizations. So they will either be contracted to other organizations, or they'll be doing, some sort of research with or partnerships with people that can help you. So that's really what I did. I went to the enterprise hub of my university and I said, I've got this idea. I've got no idea what to do next. I've never run a business. I don't know anything about business. Literally, at that point, I had never even seen a balance sheet, like had no clue. And so really luckily for me, they had Belfast City Council has like enterprise academy. So they put you through it, and it's quite a lot of money that they just give you like as grants, but not as in terms of money. It's in form of like branding support. So we had a branding manager just do all our branding for us initially, helped us really like find our company voice. We had legal help. So we had help with incorporating our company, drawing up all of the shareholder agreements. We had help with business model canvases, looking at revenue diversification, and like financial forecasting. So that was really, it wasn't that long. It was quite a sprint that we sort of went through that program, but it gave us the foundations to basically leap off into anything else afterwards. So through that, we then found, other grant organizations and support networks. It's really just that. I mean, it's really as simple as just researching opportunities and finding the one that suits you, because there are so many out there, so many, especially in the UK. If you're in the UK right now, the government is literally giving away money to bright young people with an idea.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I certainly didn't know that there were so many opportunities for that sort of thing at university. So a key takeaway from it. It's been really great speaking to you. Thank you for the really interesting perspectives you've shared. For anyone who may want to speak to you, contact you, and maybe get you to expand on any of the questions that I've asked, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, just hit me up on LinkedIn or send me an email. Obviously, I'll probably put my email address underneath this in some capacity. But yeah, honestly, get in touch. I'm really I would, to close this whole interview, I would honestly say that as well as looking for opportunities and people that can help you in a more formal, structured way, the only way that I have gotten through my career is reaching out to role models in the same way, like LinkedIn, email. And having just like one-to-one conversations, and you just never know what situation you'll get yourself into. Like, I've had conversations with like Harvard professors where they're just in their jumper having tea and just like chatting to me one-to-one. So you'll never regret reaching out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.